you ready?
Welcome to Brands Hatch for the fourth round of the Dunlop Radical UK Cup. Now, Andy, you've been described before as the world's fastest man. Can you explain to anyone who doesn't know why that is?
Yeah, well, I was lucky enough to work with Richard Noble's team 15 years ago now, 1997. We set and of course still hold the current world land speed record, 763 miles an hour in the thrust supersonic car.
And you're going for yet another record, aren't you, next year in 2013 in the Bloodhound SSC. So can you explain about building that car and what sort of record you're going for?
We've set ourselves the task of inspiring the next generation of young people with science and technology, and that's why we are building the world's most advanced 1,000-mile-an-hour car. Our car's going to have three engines. It's got a state-of-the-art Typhoon jet engine, 9 tons of thrust, which is about 65,000 horsepower. We've got a hybrid rocket, Falcon rocket, which gives us about 70,000 horsepower. And to pump the hybrid rocket, we've got a Cosworth Formula One engine, because we need 700 horsepower just for the rocket pump.
And you had a bit of a test in the 1000 car that you can see behind us today. How did that go?
Great. The thing I love about the Radical, it's a great experience for me. I've never driven an aero car before, so the performance changes dramatically with the speed, and that's a great thing for me to get used to, how the handling changes. It's also very forgiving. You know, I am a novice racing driver. This is only my second weekend ever at a club racetrack, and I've got a lot of learning to do. And this is a great high-performance car that's forgiving enough to let me get away with learning on the job. So it's absolutely perfect.
And you're racing with motoring journalist Chris Harris. Has he given you any tips at all?
Well, his tip seems to be jumping in the car and going 3 seconds faster than I am. I'm reminding myself that this is actually part of his day job, but even so, it shows I've got a lot of learning to do, so it's brilliant to have him see his, actually watch his video, look at his data, and that's another great part about the Radical, is you can pull all of that off. So I'm learning a huge amount pretty much on every lap, and particularly being alongside Chris, who's shown me how to do this.
Look, he's doing a great job because he's not used to circuit racing, doing a better job than me because the man with no experience cruised around yesterday with no problems at all, and I binned it. So yeah, my head's low at the moment. It's a really impressive little racing car, isn't it? Because it's got so much aerodynamic grip, but it's also got a lot of mechanical grip. It's fast everywhere, there's nowhere to relax. It just turns so quickly, it carries so much corner speed, and you can brake so late. I mean, I race lots of other cars, but I don't race these things. It's a bit of a learning curve, I have to say. Put my hands up. It's a really impressive little racing car.
So Neil, this is your first weekend here racing with Radical. How have you found it so far?
Oh, it's been fantastic. I'm with Max, this is his first race weekend, so I've tried to give him a lot of time in the car. So yesterday I spent probably 15 minutes in the car, so I haven't actually done a lot of laps, but 2 weeks ago I managed to do a general test day here, which was great. So still learning the car.
And you've raced lots of different types of cars before. You're racing in the Porsche Cup this year, and you've raced Ginettas as well. So how does being in a Radical compare to those?
It's very different. It takes a wee while just to adjust your driving technique to driving the Radical. And the big difference is really the speed that you can carry through corners and your braking points. So just picking out the right reference points and I suppose recalibrating yourself to drive one of these cars. But it's great fun.
And what are the main pointers or tips that you've given to Max to help him out with his first ever racing weekend?
Well, the first step really is to finish and not to do anything silly. And he will be nervous, but he just needs to drive his own race, and I'm sure he'll be fine. He's done really well. He passed his test 3 weeks ago, and only first time he sat in a race car was in November last year. So get here and in a Radical as well, fantastic.
Well, as you can see behind me, the UK Cup Radicals are lining up ready to take part in race one. We've got a really exciting and very packed grid here with Victor Carrera in pole. He's a young Brazilian driver who's been racing in Formula Ford and F3 as well. Plus, we've also got slightly more towards the back of the grid, Andy Green, the world's fastest man.
Cars then setting off on their formation lap.
rolling start as ever in the Radical UK Cup, and a very healthy field. This promises to be a very entertaining race around the tight and twisty Brands Hatch Indy Circuit. The car's weaving to get some heat into the tyres. This is how I line up then with Victor Correa in pole position. Mark Smithson starts number 1 car alongside him. Manhan Alos, very popular driver, very quick driver, lines up in 3rd. And Zach Chapman, already a race winner this year, in 4th position. The pace car peels in. We're about ready for the start here at Brands Hatch as the field form up, ready for the off. And this is going to be a very quick getaway from Carrera, who plants his right foot, sprints into the advantage. Alos looking to the top, and Mark Smithson goes round and he tags Alos. They both slither off into the gravel trap, and that's very unlucky for Alos, completely innocent in that it was just the slightest error. Mark Smithson, there he is, rejoining in the background. So unfortunately Alos beached. Smithson rejoins, and Andy Cummings in the thick of the action as Correa leads it. Terence Woodward is also well up the order, as is Zach Chapman and Tony Wells. Wells driving on his own this weekend, so let's fight for 2nd place into Surtees with Zach Chapman trying to find a way through past Terence Woodward. Chapman, who went very well at Snetterton in the opening race of the season, looking to build on that as the year progresses. He always is quick around the Brands Hatch Indy Circuit as well, so streaking through on to complete the first lap, and Victor Correa putting a little bit of doubt between himself and Terence Woodward. Woodward having to work very hard to keep Jack Chapman behind him already. It's also enabling Tony Wells to get up onto his tail as well, so that leading quartet of cars breaking away from James Abbott in 5th position. Now to Druid down the hill towards Graham Hill Bend. These cars looking absolutely spectacular. A beautiful June afternoon here at Brands Hatch, with Zach Chapman then in 3rd position. Not quite as close to Terence Woodward on this occasion, maybe just in these early stages of the race, taking an lap or 2 to bed in the tyres, just allowing the car to come back to him, and then he will really start pressurising Woodward as the race progresses. A spin there for Chris Headlam. He rejoins in his SR3 as the fight at the front of the field, very close still into Paddock Hill Bend, and Tony Wells doing an excellent job staying with this leading group in 4th position. Tony Wells, who last season started as a racing novice, he's developed so much at the wheel of the Radical SR3 and then SR8 this year. Super shot in car there with Phil Abbott. He's got Gary Kane right on his tail, the pair of them up towards the sharp end of the SR3 class as they climb up towards Druids. If you've not seen Radical racing before, there's 2 classes in the Radical UK Cup as Kane slides through Druids. The Masters class for the V8 Radical SR8s, and then also the Supersport class, the Radical SR3s. Both classes very well supported, with drivers normally starting out in the championship racing the SR3, then graduating on to the SR8. Gary Kane, quick driver, he's already done well this weekend at Brands Hatch, scoring a podium in the Radical Clubman's Cup race, and he is on the tail of Phil Abbott. He's also got Tom Jordan as well, not too far back from him, with Andy Cummings on the tail of the fastest man in the world, Andy Green. And Green defending his line there into Druids. He's not going to make it easy here for Andy Cummings. Andy Green, he's had a couple of races in the past, but really his forte is going very, very quickly. Will he be able to do that out of Graham Hill Bend? He certainly needs to, because Andy Cummings is looking to try and find a way through, and Cummings gets past him, so Cummings gains the place on Andy Green. The pair of them also in the mix with James Abbott. So Andy Green putting together a very impressive performance, I have to say though, in his Radical racing debut this weekend. He's been a long way from the back of the field during qualifying, as Victor Correa now beginning to carve through some of the SR3s. It's such a short lap here around Brands Hatch for the Radicals, 44 seconds, enough to get you onto pole position, and therefore the SR8s mixing it with the SR3s quite early as Chris Headlam continues his recovery up through the order. That's a good move on Tom Jordan, number 8 car at Paddock Hill Bend. He slides through, and this is teammate Mark Smithson, who then looks to go past him. Smithson, of course, recovering from that first lap drama. So Mark Smithson moving ahead of Tom Jordan. Colin Noble doing superbly well this weekend in the SR3s. He's got Patrick Jeans just behind him in the number 7 car, but Jeans running in the SR8, so although they're racing for position, they're not actually having a class battle, and Colin Noble looking very, very good to claim overall SR3 class honours as we get ready for the pit stops, mandatory pit stops for both single and double driver combinations, of course, in the Radical UK Cup. And Gary Kane, well, that's an unconventional approach to the pits. I think he should rejoin from there, a harmless spin on the Exeter Clark curve, and the race leader Victor Correa doing a superb job at the head of the field. Correa, who raced with considerable success in the British Formula 4 Championship. He raced last year in the European F3 Open and is now targeting a sports car career. He thinks radical racing is the best way to start that career. Couldn't agree more with that, and as a result he has come to Radical UK Cup this weekend and is really showing very impressively as the pit window opens and the drivers beginning to come in for their mandatory pit stops. Jamie Stanley strapped in, then to number 55 car as Phil Abbott peels in. Nick Padmore's about to take over, and here is probably the best view we've ever had of a Radical pit stop. Very cool, calm and collected. Phil Abbott undoes the belts, takes out his seat insert, hops out of the car. Bradley Ellis and Andy Cummings, a slightly more rushed pit stop. Bradley in the car in the passenger seat before Andy Zebra's out of it. The 88 car there, Terence Woodward hands over to Ross Kaiser. Zach Chapman, single driver entry, as Stuart Mosley heads back onto the track, having taken over from Mark Smithson. Now, of course, driver gradings apply in the Radical UK Cup. Drivers are graded A, B and C, and grade A drivers have a longer pit stop than the drivers graded B and C. Victor Crea is a grade A driver, and therefore he's had a longer pit stop, and where will that feed him back into the action? We'll find out soon, but we should be in for a thrilling second half of the race. World's fastest man, Andy Green, his day's work is done. Chris Harris will take over after the tyre pressures have been checked as the action on track continues. Colin Noble making good progress. He moves up ahead of Cliff Butler, who runs wide at paddock and slides into the gravel. It's not going to hit anything there, but that's a very unfortunate end to the race there for Cliff Butler. Zach Chapman rejoins. Now, where will he have rejoined in relation to Victor Correa? And Padmore also returns to the circuit as we head down to the pit lane, where Lucia has found Andy Green fresh from his stint.
So Andy, you've just had your pit changeover. How did your part of the race go?
Great, really enjoyed that. First race in a car of anything like this performance, only my second race weekend ever. So, number one, keep it on the black stuff, which I managed. There was a couple of high-speed moments of, yes, that's not what they told you to do in the briefing, but actually that's part of the learning process. I was pushing much harder. You know, I haven't seen the times yet, but I was over a second quicker than I've been round here at any stage, because it's the first time I've had 20-odd continuous laps, and the Radical is just so easy to get used to and to feel around the track, so absolutely loving it. Just can't wait to get out there and do some more. Brilliant fun.
I tried a little bit too hard coming out of clearways and managed to stick it on the grass and spin it. So I've given Tom a real hard task now. So yeah, I've done well really.
So did you lose a few places by spinning off?
No, I don't think I did. I think we'd got ahead enough not to worry too much ahead of the driver changes, but it's just disappointing because it's made his life an awful lot more difficult now. I think that was a nailed on second, possibly first, and now we'll probably hang on to third if we're lucky. So yeah, oh dear.
Disappointment then for Gary Kane as Victor Correa rejoins the race following on from his pit stop. Now, where will that feed him out in relation to his rivals? Well, we're going to take a short break from the action here at Brands Hatch. Join us in a few moments' time for the conclusion of race one for the Radical UK Cup.